For the first time since 2006, the Packers are in search of a new head coach. Good evening. I'm Chris Barrier alongside Kelly Price. We've got you covered tonight talking about all the potential candidates to take over for Coach McCarthy. It's a special edition of Sunday Sports Rewind. Like we said, that's Kelly. I'm Chris. Join us while we take a deep dive into all the potential candidates that might serve as the next sideline boss here in Green Bay.
Chris and I spoke with various media members around the league to help us learn a bit more about each candidate, and tonight we're going to break them down one by one.
All right, well, to the best of our knowledge, there are currently 11 guys up for the job, and of the 11 interviewing, only 4 have never served as a head coach. Almost all of them have been to a Super Bowl in some form, including our first candidate, Josh McDaniels, the Patriots offensive coordinator and a fan favorite for the job here in Green Bay. He comes from the Bill Belichick coaching tree, and he's been a part of 5 Super Bowl championships. Plus, he has extensive work with top-tier quarterbacks alongside a guy named Tom Brady. Ever heard of him? The two had their moments of bickering, but overall they've built a relationship of respect, and that's something you're obviously going to need working alongside Aaron Rodgers. The big red flags for McDaniels, though, he failed as a head coach in Denver, and he backed out of a head coaching job with the Colts after initially saying yes, and after even hiring a staff. According to our friends in New England, McDaniels is the go-to guy to replace Bill Belichick when he retires, but an opportunity in Titletown might be too good to pass up.
The thought process was, and the reports suggested that Bill Belichick was going to teach him a lot more this year on how to be a head coach, all the responsibilities. So that's why you just assumed he was going to be the heir, the man in waiting. For McDaniels to leave, it would mean that Bill Belichick is going to stick around for a while. I mean, and if you have an opportunity to be the head coach of Aaron Rodgers, how could you not at least take a look and consider it?
Well, that brings us to candidate number 2, Pat's linebacking coach, Brian Flores, a 3-time Super Bowl champ in New England, made famous for subbing in Malcolm Butler late in Super Bowl 49 before he made the clinching interception. Flores is a bit of a long shot compared to the other candidates. He's one of the few defensive-minded guys the Packers are considering, and even though he's the linebacker coach, he pretty much runs he's, for all practical purposes, the defensive coordinator. And his success in New England has garnered more interest than just Green Bay. So while McDaniels is only willing to talk to the Packers, Flores has a number of suitors to consider.
In Brian's case, I think he's going to, he's interviewing with 4 teams. I would be stunned if he didn't get an offer from one of them, and I would be surprised if he didn't take that offer. I know we interviewed in Arizona last year, and they were very close to hiring him. They loved him. He's probably glad that they didn't see him, that they only gave Steve Wilks 1 year. But, I could see both of them leaving, and I'd be surprised if they didn't get offered.
So when you're as good as the New England Patriots, Kelly, multiple teams are obviously going to come knocking at your door.
And after what's been cooking in Nolens down in New Orleans, some Saints assistants getting some big calls too. First, let's take a look at offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael. He doesn't call the plays, but he's been an integral part of the offensive machine since arriving with Sean Payton in 2006. Their offenses have never finished worse than number 8, and they finish outside the top 10 in scoring just once in that more than 10-year span. And tempo, timing, and rhythm are points of emphasis for New Orleans offense, which could be a match in Green Bay with Rodgers and company. Carmichael does not have interviews scheduled with any other teams, and he's one of 4 guys the Packers are interviewing who has not been a head coach in the NFL.
He is not this loud, boisterous kind of leader of men, if you will. He is kind of looked at as the mad scientist type in the shadows behind Sean Payton and Drew Brees. So I would be interested to see how he commands a locker room, how he commands a team, because while he draws up a lot of plays and he could be largely responsible for the Saints offense, I don't know how he would do as a head coach. I would certainly say with somebody as talented as Aaron Rodgers, if Pete Carmichael gets the job, he is going to implement what he has done here for 13 seasons with Sean Payton and Drew Brees.
The second Saints staffer the Packers interviewed is tight ends coach / assistant coach Dan Campbell, who was actually elevated to the interim head coach role when Joe Philbin was relieved of his duties in Miami during the 2015 season. He's also interviewing with the Browns and Cardinals, but never having been an offensive coordinator, what he'd bring to Green Bay as far as a scheme or style is a little bit unknown.
I mean, he is a 6'5" guy who is still built like a player and looks like he could get out there on the field. He is loud, he is engaging, he is a commanding presence, but I think hiring coordinators, he's going to let them do their thing, so to say, because I don't think we look at Dan Campbell as kind of this offensive architect or offensive genius the way we look at Sean Payton and even to a lesser extent Pete Carmichael.
Also reportedly interviewed in New Orleans on Saturday was former Buccaneers offensive coordinator Todd Monken. He hasn't been an NFL coach, but he was the head coach of Southern Miss from 2013 to 2015, improving from 1-11 in his first season to 9-5 with a bowl berth before returning to the NFL. And remember when Ryan Fitzpatrick lit the NFL world on fire earlier this season? Well, Monken had a say in that, helping Fitzpatrick become the first NFL player to throw for at least 400 yards in 3 straight games. He also put up 2,366 yards and a 100.4 passer rating in 8 starts this year. Tampa Bay also improved in offensive rankings each season, finishing 3rd in total yards and 12th in points this year, despite a dismal record. And interestingly, as Monken also interviewed with the Jets, Fitzpatrick told the New York Daily News this week, quote, "I'm telling you, he's got it. He's got the it factor as a head coach. He is smart enough. He is a big-time offensive coach," unquote. Got the full quote from Fitzpatrick on Monken on our website, NBC26.com, so be sure to check that out. Pretty high praise from Fitzmagic.
Hey, if Fitzy's saying it, you got to believe it. And believe it or not, we're only about halfway through these resumes. When we come back, shifting from the new school to the old school. This is the Packers Coaching Search edition of Sunday Sports Rewind. Stick around. Hey, welcome back. Kelly and I are sifting through the 11 known coaching candidates for the Green Bay Packers on this special edition of Sunday Sports Rewind. Now, we talked about some of the new school guys. Let's get to the old school, starting with a guy Packers fans are quite familiar with, Jim Caldwell, former head coach of both the Colts and the Lions. He won a pair of Super Bowls, but none as a head coach, although he did lose one as a head coach. Now, most Packer fans might be thinking of the Caldwell that coached 4 lukewarm seasons in Detroit and say, why do we want that guy? But don't forget, Jim Caldwell comes from the Tony Dungy coaching tree. He had a ton of success in Indy, and the way he coached Peyton Manning to a Super Bowl runner-up in 2009 might be exactly what the Packers are looking for in their coaching search.
Jim's role in that season in particular was really just to manage that team and let those guys and all that experience kind of take care of itself. I think that would translate well into the setting that he's got there in Green Bay with Aaron being the experienced leader of that offense. We always took him as a very quiet guy, not a rah-rah guy, and it seems that that works well with players that have a great deal of experience, and I think could translate well into the situation that the Packers are looking to fill right there.
Now to the guy who took over coaching duties for Caldwell, Chuck Pagano. Both he and Caldwell did not coach this past season, so the Packers were able to interview them first without getting permission from any current teams. Pagano had a nice run in Indy, but he was never able to get Andrew Luck and his squad over that hump. His final 3 seasons, Pagano went 20-28 before getting fired at the end of 2017. And unlike the calm and collected Caldwell, Pagano has a bit more fire, and he could energize some of the younger players. But is his coaching style still relevant in today's NFL?
He's a defensive coach. Pagano is a defensive mind. He has always been for 30-plus years a guy where it's defense first. And so to have an offense being run by maybe the smartest quarterback in the league and a young talent who clearly in Luck is something special at the time, always seemed to kind of miss. Just was always just a little bit. Colts fans were left, hey, it was great that they made the playoffs those 3 years, but there's always that what if.
So, Kelly, those are a couple of the old school guys that some might say are past their prime. But our buddy that we just heard from, Brad Brown from Indy, believes that they're both going to coach next season, whether or not it's here or somewhere else.
Speaking of old school, we spoke today with Chase Williams of WPXI in Pittsburgh, who classified Steelers offensive line coach Mike Munchak in those exact terms. He's been a head coach before, too. He went 22-26 as Tennessee's head coach from 2011 to 2013. Munchak played left guard for the Titans and Oilers franchise from 1982 to 1993. He was a 9-time Pro Bowler and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2001. But the Packers aren't the only suitors. Reports suggest Denver looks to be leading the pack for Munchak. Since his arrival in Pittsburgh in 2014, he's elevated the Steelers' ground game, and Ben Roethlisberger has shouted out his O-line coach many times in his tenure. He's a well-respected coach and personality who has risen above the fray of drama in Pittsburgh.
I think because Mike Munchak he's not a flashy guy. He's not a John Gruden type, that's in your face. And I think that would fit well in Green Bay, the blue-collar mentality there. And I think that's just how he goes about his business. He does the job, isn't about the bells and whistles, very, very matter of fact. And I think I think that would fit well there. Obviously, his time in Tennessee didn't go as well as what he would have liked. You can tell that he has more interest this time around. Last year, he was linked with the Cardinals. When they called him back for the second interview, he said no. So, for whatever reason, he's more interested now. Maybe it's to get out of the circus that has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who knows?
And for Packers fans pining for the next Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur is the closest candidate you'll get. The 39-year-old was actually McVay's offensive coordinator in 2017 when the Rams were number 8 on the ground and number 10 through the air. And even before that, LaFleur worked with Matt Ryan when the Falcons went on to the Super Bowl, Ryan's MVP season with Mike Shanahan. But this year, it's been a mixed bag as LaFleur called plays for the very first time as the Titans offensive coordinator. With injuries to Marcus Mariota and more, the Titans finished 29th in passing and 7th in rushing with Derrick Henry. The Titans just missed the playoffs as the offense seemed to be just hitting its stride.
I think he's an innovative offensive mind, and I think the goal would be that he could open things up for Aaron Rodgers and company. That was certainly the goal here when Mike Vrabel and general manager John Robinson brought him in this past year to try to open up the Titans offense for Marcus Mariota. If Green Bay wants Matt LaFleur, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy who's been tutored by some of the best offensive minds in football and coached some of the best quarterbacks in football. You hope he can bring that to the Packers.
All right, last but certainly not least, former Miami Dolphins head coach Adam Gase interviewed, well, today, actually, alongside with a couple of the guys we just mentioned that were scheduled to interview today. 3 years of head coaching under his belt with the Dolphins, but not much success there. The big sticking point for Gase is his work with Peyton Manning in 2013 as the quarterback's coach, when Manning set the NFL single-season record for passing yards and touchdowns with Denver. Now, if he can replicate that success with a quarterback, he's pretty much got a job anywhere he wants. But rumors out of Miami circulated that some of the players didn't like his coaching style, and some even tweeted celebratory tweets when he was fired. So that is what we would call here a red flag. So there you have it. The 10 external candidates interviewing in the addition, of course, interim head coach Joe Philbin. Prediction time, Kelly. Who makes the most sense for you? Who do you see as the next head coach of the Green Bay Packers?
This is hard. I don't like predictions. Although he's only been a play caller for 1 year, Matt LaFleur really piques my interest personally. I think he could be a hit hire, kind of like that Sean McVay in LA. But if the Packers can pry him away from Denver, I also see Munchak fitting that kind of old school blue collar vibe that we talked about earlier.
I don't think they're going old school. I would say Josh McDaniels, he makes the most sense, but I just don't think he's going to leave New England. So I'm going to say Matt LaFleur. I like that pick. Matt LaFleur is a young, offensive-minded guy. It's the new school. It's the future of the NFL, and it's time the Packers take that route. All right, well, that's all the time we got. For Kelly, I'm Chris. We're going to leave you tonight with the Bears losing to the Eagles just to cheer you up and get you in positive spirits. Plus, it features the Spanish broadcast radio call, which is out of control awesome. Good night, everybody.
43 yardas. El snap. Le mete el pie. Distancia, dirección. ¡Le dio el poste! ¡No! ¡Falló! ¡Oh! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! Los Eagles se van con la victoria.